There are points in life that divide everything into a clear before and after. Events so unbelievable, so surreal, your mind simply refuses to process them. Last night, I experienced one of those moments. It started like any other evening, ordinary, uneventful, or at least that's what I thought at first. I arrived home later than usual, the house enveloped in a calm silence. The air carried the soft scent of vanilla from the candles Geraldine always lit when she wanted to unwind. That should have been my first clue. Something was off, but I ignored it. I made my way into the kitchen, assuming she'd be cooking or maybe watching a video on her phone. Instead, I found her at the table, unmoving, her gaze fixed on nothing in particular. A glass of wine sat untouched in front of her. I placed my keys on the counter and asked if everything was all right. There was no immediate response, just a long, drawn-out exhale as though she was preparing herself for something painful. "Leo," she finally said in a soft voice, noticeably more fragile than usual. "Sit down." Right then, something inside me shifted. I couldn't explain it, but my body reacted before my mind did. I knew, without any logic, that something terrible was about to unfold. I paused before sliding the chair out and taking a seat across from her. My heart had started to pound. My fingers felt chilled. I tried to ease the thick tension in the room with a strained laugh. "You're scaring me," I told her, hoping humor would dissolve whatever was building between us. She didn't laugh. Instead, she twisted a napkin nervously between her fingers and then said something simple yet devastating. "I haven't been honest with you." It was such an ordinary sentence. One you might hear when someone forgets to handle a responsibility or breaks a promise. But the way she said it, it carried weight, a kind of sorrow that made my stomach churn. I couldn't respond. Words abandoned me. Her lips trembled. "I've been hiding something from you. For a long time." And that's when it struck me. The realization came so fast, it was like the air had been knocked from my lungs. "You've been unfaithful," I whispered. She flinched just the slightest bit, but it was all I needed to confirm it. A deep silence settled over us, pressing down with unbearable heaviness. I couldn't think straight. My thoughts scrambled, grasping for anything to explain this. My chest felt like it would burst from the pressure of 20 years of trust collapsing in seconds. "How long?" My voice didn't sound like my own. Her hands clenched the napkin tighter, twisting it violently as if trying to strangle her guilt into silence. "Leo, just please hear me out." "No," I stood suddenly, the legs of the chair screeching against the floor. I pressed my hands against the table to steady myself. "Just tell me." "How long?" Tears welled up in her eyes. And then, with barely a whisper, she answered. In that instant, everything I knew crumbled. I stood there, motionless, watching her, hoping she'd offer something that could make sense of this. But she said nothing more. Her hands trembled. Her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite identify. Was it guilt? Was it sorrow? Or had she finally felt free? "How long?" I asked again. This time, my voice was hushed, yet so much heavier. It felt like the words came from the very pit of my soul. She took a sharp breath, and I could almost see the storm inside her. She was weighing how much to reveal, calculating whether leaving anything out would lessen the blow. Could this truth even be softened? "For years," she finally admitted. My whole body locked up. Breathing became difficult. Years. Not a one-time mistake. Not some regrettable decision from a moment of weakness. Years. That was longer than our youngest child had been in high school. Longer than some people stayed in a job. Years ago, we had celebrated our 16th wedding anniversary. Just the two of us. I remembered walking with her on a beach, thinking how fortunate I was to have her. Now, I had to ask the next question. The one that could destroy everything completely. Was it just one person? She closed her eyes. Something inside me broke. "How many?" I demanded. She shook her head. "It's not like that." "Then what exactly is it like, Geraldine?" My voice cracked, strained with disbelief. She wiped at her face as though she could erase everything with a single swipe. "Two," she admitted. "But Leo, two." My legs went weak. I had imagined many things in life: success, failure, retirement. I had imagined us growing old together, watching our children start families of their own, laughing over shared memories. But I had never, not once, pictured myself standing in our kitchen, hearing the woman I loved reveal that while I was working to build our future, she was silently tearing it down. "Who?" She didn't respond immediately. "Who, Geraldine?" I pressed. Her lips began to tremble. Then she finally said the name. And in that moment, everything fell apart. My world didn't crack. It shattered. Glenn. The name echoed in my mind again and again, like a cruel riddle I couldn't solve. I stood there frozen, though my thoughts were spiraling, desperate to cling to something real. Not him. anyone but him. I stared at her, silently begging her to correct herself, to say she misspoke, to choose another name. But she didn't. Her mouth remained slightly open, as if she'd been holding that name inside her for too long, like it was something toxic she had to release. Her eyes shimmered with a mix of emotions. Regret, shame, maybe even fear, but none of it mattered anymore. The name had already been said. Glenn, my closest friend, the man I considered a brother in every way except by blood. He stood beside me when I got married, raised his glass to celebrate my happiness, and promised he'd always have my back. That same man had been involved with my wife. A sickening twist gripped my stomach, a wave of nausea slowly creeping up, threatening to choke me. I uttered one word. No, it wasn't posed as a question. It was a firm rejection of what I had just heard. Geraldine recoiled slightly. Leo, please, she tried again. But I repeated it, louder and with more force than I intended, the pain stripping away any restraint from my voice. I stepped back from her instinctively, as if she had turned into something harmful, someone I couldn't let near me anymore. My whole body trembled, a physical rebellion against the weight of her confession. Questions stormed my mind. How did this happen? When did it start? And, above all, why? Memories surged forward in a chaotic flood. Me and Glenn grabbing drinks on Fridays. Him joining us for backyard barbecues, joking with my kids. I remembered him telling me how lucky I was to have Geraldine as my wife. Was he mocking me the whole time? Was it all some twisted game? You're going to tell me everything? I said, my voice low and threatening. Every single detail. She hesitated. That pause sparked something furious inside me. You owe me that much, Geraldine. She drew in a sharp breath, her fingers clinging to the table until her knuckles turned pale. Then, finally, she started to speak. Of course, she'd met Glenn through me. He was woven into our lives from the beginning. She insisted it had just happened, like some tragic love song cliché or a bad romance novel. It started with small things, text messages, inside jokes, shared laughs at my expense. It was never meant to get this far, she whispered. I swear, Leo. A harsh, bitter laugh escaped me. You swear? After all these years, you still think your word means something to me? She flinched, and I was glad. She deserved to feel hurt. Maybe not as deeply as I did, but something close. Yet she kept going. The first incident, she admitted, had happened 3 years ago, not 4 as she initially claimed. That was her first lie, and I caught it immediately. I didn't confront her. I just bit down on the inside of my cheek and let her continue. It took place at Glenn's house, one night when I had stayed late at work. I remembered it clearly. I had messaged her, saying I'd be home after midnight. She told me she was heading to bed early. Instead, she had been with him. My hands curled into fists, my nails pressing into my palms. But I said nothing. I just listened. It wasn't something we planned, she continued in a whisper. It just... Don't... I interrupted. She froze mid-sentence. Don't even try to tell me it just happened. Don't insult my intelligence like that. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. I'm sorry, but that word had lost all its meaning to me. She admitted it had happened more than once, but not on a regular basis. Sometimes months passed with nothing, and then suddenly it would resume, always in secret, always when I was stuck working late or when Glenn's wife was out of town. Then she said something that hit harder than anything else. I never wanted to leave you, Leo. That was the moment everything inside me simply stopped. My breath, my pulse, the ability to feel anything beyond a deep, consuming disgust. You didn't want to leave me? I repeated, my tone eerily calm. So instead, you decided to share me? Tears slipped quietly down her cheeks, but I felt nothing. Not anymore. That night, something precious was lost. It wasn't just my marriage or even my best friend. I had lost the life I thought I knew, and I had no clue what the future would look like now. I don't even recall leaving the house. One second I was standing in the kitchen, suffocating under the weight of her words, and the next, I found myself outside, in the driveway, gasping for air like I'd been underwater. Maybe I had. Maybe I still was. The world around me felt surreal and distorted. The streetlights buzzed faintly, casting their dim glow on the pavement. Somewhere in the distance, cars drove by, their sounds muted. Everything looked the same, yet nothing felt right. How could it? For 2 decades, I'd lived inside a carefully constructed illusion, completely blind to what had really been happening. Glenn. Just thinking his name felt like poison sliding across my tongue. I had trusted him with everything. I had believed in both of them. While I thought I was a devoted husband, a reliable friend, a man who had it all, I had actually been living in ignorance. I have no idea how long I stood there, staring at the cracked concrete beneath my feet. Minutes might have passed. Maybe hours. Time didn't feel real anymore. My hands trembled, my entire body filled with a restless, fiery energy like I was on the verge of shattering. I needed to do something, anything, or I'd fall apart. I needed answers. Before I even realized it, I was behind the wheel of my car, gripping the steering wheel with so much force it felt like my bones would snap. The engine came to life with a low growl, the dashboard casting a red glow across my hands. My thoughts screamed for me to slow down, to breathe, to think. But my body had already made the decision. I shifted the car into gear and drove. I didn't even need directions. I had been to Glenn's place more times than I could count: birthday parties, poker games, summer barbecues. I even helped him carry the couch into that house the day he moved in. Now, I was heading there with one purpose: to face the man who had betrayed me for years. My eyes barely registered the road as it passed beneath the tires. I wasn't rehearsing any kind of confrontation. I wasn't planning out the conversation. All I knew was that I needed to look him in the eye. When I finally pulled up outside his home, my heart was pounding so hard it drowned out everything else. The lights inside were on. He hadn't gone to bed yet. Good. That meant I wouldn't have to wait. I stepped out of the car, each movement deliberate and heavy, like my limbs were carrying the weight of what was about to happen. I walked up the driveway, past his old truck, the one I had seen him drive more times than I could count, and past the porch where we had spent so many nights laughing over cold beers. That laughter felt like a distant echo now, a cruel joke. I pressed the doorbell. Once. Then again. A pause followed. Then I heard footsteps approaching. The door creaked open, and there he was. Glenn. His face was twisted in confusion as he recognized me. Leo? What are you? You know why I'm here. He looked away quickly, and that flicker of guilt was all I needed to see. It hit me like a punch to the chest. Silence filled the space between us, thick and unbearable. How long? My voice came out steady but cold. He hesitated. Wrong answer. I said, how long, Glenn? His jaw clenched and he sighed. Leo, listen. Don't, I cut in, my tone sharp and colder than ice. Don't ask me to listen. I've done enough of that for one night. He dragged his hand across his face, clearly worn down. He looked like he hadn't slept. Good. I hoped it was eating him alive. It's been years, he finally admitted. I exhaled slowly. I had suspected it, known it deep down, but hearing it aloud shattered something inside me. Years. For years, Glenn had smiled in my face while sleeping with my wife behind my back. I couldn't help but ask, was it ever going to end? He didn't speak. That silence told me everything I needed to know. My hands began to tremble, and a wave of emotion I couldn't even name, fury, grief, humiliation, surged through me. You were supposed to be my best friend, I said, my voice cracking. You were like family to me. He dropped his gaze, shame washing over his features. I didn't want it to happen. I let out a bitter laugh, one that felt like it could burn right through me. Don't lie to me, not now. You owe me at least that much. His face twisted, though I couldn't tell if it was regret or guilt anymore. Either way, it didn't matter. I don't even know what to say, he mumbled. Well, you don't get to say anything. That's over, I snapped. You gave up that right? I turned to leave. But then I stopped, one foot on the porch step, and turned back. Just one more thing, Glenn. He looked up, face blank. When did she stop being mine? The question hung there like a storm cloud ready to burst. After a long pause, he delivered the blow that truly undid me. She never was. The next thing I remember, I was behind the wheel, my hands gripping it tightly, knuckles pale, vision blurred, not from the road but from the truth. She never was. That line echoed through my head like a siren. I wasn't even furious anymore. The anger had boiled over and evaporated, leaving behind something far heavier. A quiet, suffocating despair. Because Glenn wasn't wrong. If Geraldine had ever really been mine, she wouldn't have done what she did, not once, not over, and definitely not for 4 long years. There had been love, at least, I believed there had. I wasn't foolish enough to think our marriage had been fake. We'd built a life. 2 children. A house that felt like home. I had believed in us. But now, a painful thought settled deep in my chest. What if I had always loved her more than she had loved me? That was the thought that tore me apart. The possibility that this betrayal hadn't been a single tragic decision, but something she had been quietly allowing, waiting for me to catch on. When I got home, the house was quiet and dark. I didn't get out right away. I just sat there, staring at the front door. This place, once filled with memories, now felt foreign, haunted by everything I had lost. I could almost see the echoes of happier times. The late-night talks on the porch, our kids tearing through wrapping paper on Christmas mornings, the quiet moments when she'd lean on my shoulder during movies. Even the smell of her perfume in the bedroom. Was any of it real? Or had it only been real to me? I shut off the engine but didn't let go of the wheel. Somehow, releasing it felt like surrendering to all the pain. Then, I noticed movement. The porch light flicked on, and there she was, Geraldine. Standing in the doorway, wrapped in her robe, her hair damp like she'd just stepped out of the shower. She had been waiting, not for me, for the moment everything would finally come crashing down. I stepped out of the car slowly, feeling every ounce of exhaustion press into my bones. I didn't know what was waiting for me inside. I didn't know what lies she might still try to spin. But there was one thing I knew for certain. I wasn't the same person who had left this house just hours before. Even before I stepped through the door, she was already in tears. I didn't speak. I walked past her, straight into the kitchen, and poured myself a drink. My hands were calm now, no longer trembling. She lingered at the doorway, hesitant, almost afraid to come closer. In a quiet voice, she asked, "Where did you go?" I gently swirled the whiskey in my glass before lifting my gaze to meet hers. "You already know," I replied. Her lip began to quiver. "Leo, please, we need to talk." I exhaled sharply, shaking my head in disbelief. "Talk? About what, Geraldine?" "About how my best friend's been betraying me with my wife for years. About how I spent our anniversary thinking I was the luckiest man alive while you were probably sneaking messages to him under the dinner table. Or maybe we should discuss how you sat at this table, shared a meal with our children, kissed me goodnight, and then I stopped myself there. My throat tightened. Couldn't go on. Because if I did, I might shatter. She edged a little closer, her steps cautious. "I never meant to hurt you." Cold, bitter laugh escaped me. "That's just it, isn't it? You didn't mean to hurt me. You just didn't care enough not to." The silence that followed was deafening. She wiped her tear-streaked face, seeming smaller now, diminished. Nothing like the woman I had loved for 2 decades. Not the woman I had once pictured growing old beside. In a whisper, she asked, "Do you still love me?" In that moment, it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. That question should have had a simple answer. Of course I did. How could 2 decades of love just vanish overnight? Or maybe I didn't. How could I still love someone who'd betrayed me like this? But the truth was far more painful. I didn't know. I couldn't separate my love for her from the hurt. I wasn't sure if I'd ever be able to look at her without thinking of Glenn, without being reminded of the years I'd lost to lies. I drew a long breath. "I don't even recognize who you are anymore, Geraldine." Her breath caught in her throat. "You say you didn't want to hurt me, but you let it happen. Again and again." That broke her. She began to cry uncontrollably, gasping for air like she was the one who had been wounded. And I just stood there, watching the woman I had devoted 20 years to collapse in front of me. I should have felt something, anything, but I didn't. Because the man who had walked out of this house earlier wasn't the man standing here now. In the kitchen, I stood unmoved, watching her fall apart, her shoulders shaking, hands clutching the counter like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Guilt weighed her down, and still, I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just a deep, soul-crushing exhaustion. Not the kind that comes after a long day, but the kind that settles inside when you realize your entire life has been a lie. This wasn't the woman I had married. Maybe she never was. Maybe I had spent 20 years loving a fantasy, a version of her that had only ever existed in my mind. I set the glass on the counter and pressed my fingers to my temples. My head throbbed. My whole body ached under the emotional toll of the night. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Say something. Anything. I can't bear this silence." I released a slow breath and leaned against the counter, studying her like she was someone I'd never met before. "Why now?" I asked after a long pause. She looked confused. "What do you mean? Why are you telling me this now, Geraldine?" I repeated, my voice calm, even. "You had 4 years to come clean. For years to stop what you were doing. For years to at least give me a chance to walk away with some dignity. But you didn't. So why tonight?" She made a broken sound, a half-sob, half-laugh. "Because I couldn't do it anymore," she admitted. "I couldn't keep lying to you. Every time I looked at you, Anna." I raised my hand, cutting her off. "Don't," I said flatly. She swallowed hard. "Leo, I still love you." "You don't get to say that," I interrupted. "Not anymore." She flinched. The words were bitter in my mouth, but they were the truth. Whatever love she claimed to feel hadn't stopped her, not the first time, not the second, not the third. It hadn't stopped her from crawling into our bed after being with him, pretending everything was fine. It hadn't stopped her from stealing the life I thought we were building together. "I don't know what to do," she whispered. "I do." The words came before I even realized I was speaking. But the moment they left my lips, I knew they were the only real truth that remained in this house. Her breath caught again. "What do you mean?" I straightened, feeling a strange calm come over me, as if I had finally taken control of something for the first time in years. "I'm done." Her eyes widened in shock, panic spreading across her face. "No, Leo, wait, we can fix this. We can go to counseling, we can, There is no we anymore, Geraldine," I said, my voice steady, unwavering. She moved toward me, desperation in her eyes, but I didn't budge. "Leo, please," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "Please don't do this." I tilted my head slightly, studying her like she was a riddle I had finally deciphered. "This was your doing, Geraldine." Her expression collapsed as tears returned. "I never meant to hurt you," she sobbed again. I shook my head slowly, murmuring, "You keep repeating that, like it's supposed to mean something." While she seemed to be falling apart, I felt the opposite. I was waking up, finally seeing clearly. For 2 decades, I had poured everything into being a devoted husband. I worked hard to be a good man, to ensure my family never lacked a thing. I gave up time, energy, even my peace of mind. And what did it all lead to? A wife who had been betraying me with my closest friend for 4 long years. A marriage that had ended long before I realized it. No more. I wasn't about to waste another moment on this life that had been built on lies. Without another word, I turned and made my way toward the staircase. "Where are you going?" she called out in a panic. "To pack," I said flatly over my shoulder. She gasped, her voice breaking. "No, please, you can't just leave. Where would you even go? This is your home." At the bottom of the stairs, I stopped and glanced back at her. "It used to be my home," I replied. "But it hasn't felt like one in a long, long time." Her face collapsed entirely, and for the briefest moment I felt a flicker of pity for her. But then Glenn's name surfaced in my mind. I thought about every deception, every evening she came home late, every time she smiled at me with that secret tucked behind her eyes. Just like that, any love I had left for her vanished. I turned my back to her, climbed the stairs, and for the first time in 20 years I made a decision that was solely for me. I was walking away. And I wasn't coming back. I barely recall the act of packing. My hands moved almost automatically, pulling clothes from drawers, shoving them into a duffel bag. I wasn't focused on what I was taking or leaving behind, I just needed to escape. The house felt like it was shrinking, suffocating me with memories I no longer wanted to carry. Behind me, I heard her steps on the staircase. She lingered at the threshold, hesitant, like the room itself scared her. And honestly, it should have. "Leo, please," her voice was hoarse, strained. "Don't walk out like this." I kept packing. "Where are you going to go?" she asked again. Once the bag was zipped shut, I finally looked at her. Her face was streaked with tears, her hands visibly shaking. The woman who once meant everything to me now seemed like someone I didn't recognize. "I'm not sure," I said truthfully. "But anywhere is better than here." She opened her mouth slightly, fear flashing across her face. She was just beginning to understand that I was really leaving. "We can fix this," she whispered with urgency. A dry, bitter laugh escaped me. "Fix this?" I echoed. "You can't fix something that's already gone, Geraldine. You bury it." She winced, but it didn't move me. I slung the bag over my shoulder and headed toward the door. She rushed forward, standing in my path. "Leo, think about the kids. Think about everything we've built. We can see someone, we can. There is no we anymore." I cut in firmly. Her breath caught in her throat. "Please," she begged, her voice barely audible. I looked at her, my tone low and steady. Tell me one thing. If I had never found out, if you hadn't confessed, would it have ever stopped? Her face went pale. That silence was all the answer I needed. I stepped around her, descending the stairs with calm, deliberate steps. I could feel her eyes on me, heavy with sorrow, but I didn't turn back. At the front door, I paused. My hand hovered over the doorknob. Just for a second, I faltered, not because I wanted to stay, but because I knew crossing that threshold meant there would be no return. Everything I knew was ending. With a deep breath, I turned the knob, and then I walked out, for good. The night I left that house, I believed I was abandoning everything. My marriage, my home, my family. I thought I was stepping into uncertainty, destined to forever feel like half of a broken whole. But I was wrong. That night wasn't the end. It was the beginning, the start of a new chapter. Those first few weeks passed in a blur. I found a small apartment on the opposite side of town. It was sparsely furnished. Just a bed, a couch, and a coffee maker. I wasn't seeking comfort, only space. I needed air I could breathe. The silence there was different. It wasn't the crushing silence I had known for years. It was lighter, almost peaceful. There were no forced conversations, no walking on eggshells, no wondering whether anything was genuine. For the first time in so long, I could simply be. Of course, the kids struggled. They were old enough to understand that something had broken between their parents. But I never shared the full story, not to shield Geraldine, but to protect them. At the start, she tried to reconnect. Texts, calls. She even showed up at my door. I didn't respond. She wasn't mine to worry about anymore. She had made her decisions. Now I was making mine. I began focusing on myself. I immersed myself fully in work, rebuilding daily habits, and figuring out who I was beyond being someone's husband. I picked up running again, letting the rhythm of the pavement clear my mind. I reached out to old friends I had lost touch with during my marriage, slowly weaving those connections back into my life. Books that had gathered dust for years finally had their pages turned, and I found pieces of myself in their stories. Then, one morning, I woke up with a sense of ease. The anger, while still present, no longer ruled over me. The pain hadn't vanished, but it stopped defining every part of who I was. Somehow, I had come through the most painful betrayal I had ever known, and I was still here, still breathing, still standing. Roughly 12 months after walking away, I was sitting outside a cozy little cafe, simply watching life unfold around me. It wasn't a grand moment, just a quiet slice of the day, but I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. At a nearby table, a woman caught my attention. She was deeply focused on her book, a soft smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. When she eventually lifted her gaze, our eyes met. She smiled warmly. I returned the smile, and in that quiet, fleeting exchange, I understood something clearly. I had finally let go of the past and stepped into the future.